Hey guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and I am just sitting here finishing up editing this video that I am about ready to upload to YouTube. And before I did, I wanted to touch base with everyone and kind of give a summary of what these videos are. So as you know, if you have been watching my videos, I had not put out a video a couple of weeks ago for about 2 or 3 weeks. And that was because I had this cold and I was hoarse and I just didn't have a voice. And I still felt pretty good and was able to do things around the house, but I just could not talk. So I decided, well, since I can't put out videos, I'll go ahead and keep making videos of things that I'm doing and then do voiceovers as soon as my voice comes back. And so that's what these 3 videos that I have for you today are. So one of the videos that I'm sharing is making creamy tortellini, and it's a really good recipe and we've really enjoyed it. The other video is repotting my amaryllis, dividing them, and also getting sweet potatoes started. And I also am propagating some geraniums this year. So I was just sitting in my sunroom doing some of that, and I thought, well, I'll just videotape it in case anybody else has these types of plants and wants to know how to do this. And then the other video that I'm doing is I just released this video right here on how to make this bee tote bag, and it is just made out of a plastic shopping bag that you get for like $1 or so at our stores that we all love to go to, and you can make it in any size you want. This is a smaller size, but I had shared with you when I made that video that I had been making more as well, and so I'm going to share the video on this one today, and it's an Americana or patriotic style, and it's this one right here. And again, it's the same thing. It has that vinyl or whatever the material is for those disposable and reusable shopping bags, but it makes a great tote, very heavy duty. And I'm having so much fun making these. So I also have a tutorial that just makes this print here, and then you can go back to this video if you want to see how to assemble it. But I just wanted to share with you those things. I also have several of you asking how my bedroom remodel is going, because I had told you earlier in the winter that I needed to go up there and I needed to remove our old wallpaper and paint the room, because it has been 25 years since we have done that. And when we moved into this house, I had just put wallpaper on top of the old wallpaper that was probably from the 50s in that room. And so I have been working on that behind the scenes. During my illness time, I did work in it, I believe, 1 or 2 days, but I'm doing a little bit a day just because it's a lot of work and I've got a lot of things going on and I need to get it done, and I'd like to get it done before summertime because summertime is so busy. So I am going to be sharing with you a video on the before and after at some point, but I will show you a picture of our before bedroom right here. And here is what our bedroom is looking like now. So you can see it's a complete war zone in there. I started off just moving furniture away from the wall and doing it little by little, and then we were able to still use our bedroom. But then it was becoming, I needed to get more of it done, so we put everything in the middle of the room. And now I'm just going around and removing that old wallpaper. And I do have a steamer, and that's working nicely. But it still takes a lot of time with a lot of walls. And it is an old house, so it is plaster underneath. And it's been patched up many times. So I'm working on that. Tomorrow I plan on going and getting some more patching stuff and also picking out some paint, because I want to paint the walls. And I'm probably going to stick with a white. That way, throughout the rest of our lives, I guess, because I don't know that I'm going to do anything to that room after this, but it will be able to be used with any color, and you can always change it by just changing the decor in the room. White is so easy to work with. So that is my plan, and I hope that it all goes as planned, and I hope it turns out well. I did do the boys' bedroom. When they moved out, I did paint their room and redo it, pull up all the carpeting, work on it. And here's a picture of their room now. It's more of a guest room, but they still consider it their room because they are home quite a bit on different weekends, and they still use that as their bedroom. But it's a nice bright room, and I'd like to make our bedroom kind of the same. So I hope you enjoy these videos that I have for you today, and I hope that you learn something. I hope that you're able to make the tortellini or the bag, and I hope you're enjoying getting ready for summer by planting your own plants and propagating. So here are the videos. Thanks for watching, and have a great week. I recently bought this new skillet from Walmart, and it's a Pioneer Woman, and it's 3.5 liters, I believe. It's all electric. It just has a plug-in at the handle that can come off, and then you wash it without submerging it completely and stuff because the handle stays on. But I found it to be really useful. It is non-stick inside, but I purchased it because I thought this would be nice when I'm cooking and I need to bring you over to the stove top. I can go ahead and do some cooking right at the countertop and not have to continue to move my camera around. So we are going to be making a tortellini in cream sauce with a lot of different add-ons. So what I've got in my skillet first is about 4 tablespoons of butter, or maybe about half a stick. It may be a half a stick. And I'm just getting that to melt right there. And we had some tortellini soup not too long ago, and I still had part of that bag left. It was a chicken tortellini, I believe, but you can use any kind of tortellini you want to. And I thought this would be a perfect day for that tortellini. So once the butter has melted, we are going to add some flour. And I am just going to estimate, I cook by estimation, and I've got about 2 tablespoons right there, and I'm going to stir that in with that flour. And it's still quite a bit runny, and this is a big skillet, so I think I'm going to add a little more flour. And what I'm making today will be for several meals for us. I like to make larger batches, and then I get a day or two where I don't have to cook, and that's always nice. So I did add another tablespoon of flour to that, and now I'm adding some garlic. And whenever you add garlic, you don't want to overcook it, otherwise it becomes bitter. So you want to do that kind of at the end of sautéing. And so we're just going to let that cook so that flour cooks. We don't want that raw flour taste in it. And so then I'm going to add a little bit of freshly ground pepper, just to taste, whatever you like, and just keeping it stirred so it's not burning. I do have it down at 250, I believe. I'm not sure if that's the temperature I have it at. We'll try to take a peek there. No, it's at 350. And so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take some Italian seasoning. Now, you don't have to add Italian seasoning to your tortellini cream sauce, but Andy and I really like it. It just gives it more flavor. And this is my freshly ground Italian seasoning mix that I get from the garden and dry, and then mix my blend together. And I just added about a teaspoon, a little less than a teaspoon, to my cream sauce. Then I've got a good 1 cup of cream. I think it's a little over a cup, and I'm mixing that in. And you want to add it all and then just keep stirring. And that is how you avoid getting lumps in your cream sauces or your gravies. You don't want to add just a little bit of liquid at a time because that thickens too fast and makes lumps. So add it all and then just stir so that it melts in and you won't have your clumps. Then I'm going to add about a cup of milk. This is just regular milk here. And, you know, if you really like rich sauces, you could add all cream. But I think that would be a little too rich for us. You could also make this with just a milk. It just won't be as rich, but it would still taste really good. So then we're going to let this simmer for just a few minutes. And while it's simmering, I have some dried Roma tomatoes from last year, and I've taken them out of the freezer. I just keep them in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. That way I don't have to worry if they weren't completely dry or something when I was dehydrating them. Sometimes you have a couple that aren't as dry as the others, and so just keeping them in the freezer just extends their life. And so they're pretty tough right now because they have been frozen and they are dried and they're thick, and these are really good. We like to just grab them and chew on them too. They're like eating a tomato potato chip. So I'm going to chop this up into pieces that are small enough to be bite size. And then once we put them into our cream sauce, they will soften up and they'll give a nice rich flavor, like little pieces of tomato in the sauce. So you can add these or you can leave them out. I just happen to have them, and I love to use them when I'm cooking Italian food or making any kind of sauce that would be good with tomatoes, or even when I'm making soup. If I need a little tomatoey taste, I'll add some of those too. So here I have one of those frozen spinach balls that I have in my freezer from last year, and I have thawed it out, and now I am just cutting it into smaller pieces because remember when I made this, it's all full leaf, and I don't want the full leaves in the sauce. I want them small enough to fit in our spoon. So I've got it cut down pretty good, and I'm stirring this so we don't get any browning or burning at the bottom, but it seems to be doing just fine. And so the next thing we are going to put in here, I've decided that it's pretty thick, so I'm going to add another, and that looked like a half a cup of milk, and we can just do it to our taste. If you don't want as much cream sauce, just use less flour. I like the cream sauce, and really we find that the cream sauce gets soaked up in the tortellini once we put it in the refrigerator and have it the next night. So it seems like the cream sauce is barely there after you have it as a leftover. And there I added the other half a cup of milk. So we've got 2 cups of milk and 1 cup of cream at this point. And now I've added the spinach as well, so we've got a really flavorful cream sauce right there. I am going to add some chopped up ham. We had a ham and we had leftovers, so I just cubed it up and put it in the freezer in individual bags for soups or casseroles or breakfast items. And so this is about 2 cups of cubed ham, and it's fully cooked, and that is going into our sauce as well. And again, remember to keep stirring so that it doesn't scorch on the bottom. Now the next thing we're going to add is a little bit of salt, and you might want to taste your cream sauce to see what it tastes like and to see how much salt you need. I know since we've added so much milk and I haven't added any salt yet, that a small teaspoonful was fine. but we'll taste it again at the end. We are going to add Parmesan cheese, and that will add a lot of saltiness to it, so you may want to wait until after that's added. Now here I have some sweet peas here, and this is a smaller bag of them, and so I am using half of the bag, and I don't know if it's maybe half a cup or possibly 3/4 of a cup of sweet peas. And we're just going to toss those in frozen. It's okay. They'll cook in the sauce. And then here is my shredded Parmesan cheese. Now I've got the shredded here, but you can also use the grated, or just the kind in the canister is fine. And I am going to add probably, I'm guessing that's probably a cup and a half of Parmesan cheese there. You can add whatever you like. And at this point, I do like to turn my heat down lower because that cheese, we don't want it to curdle and separate. While I was making the cream sauce, I was cooking the tortellini in boiling water on the stove, and they only take a couple of minutes to cook. And I just put a little salt in the water and throw them in the pan. These are from Aldi, and they are the Priano tortellini, and this was a family size bag, and if you remember, I used half of it in that tortellini soup that we made not too long ago, so we still had half of it left. And so I am just putting this in our cream sauce, draining it just a little bit. The cream sauce is pretty thick, so a little bit of water on the noodles won't hurt anything. It will keep them from the sauce from getting overly thick. And also, as you set this in this cream sauce, they're going to absorb some of that sauce, and so it will become thicker as well. So at this point, I have everything added. You can taste it and make sure you have the right amount of salt, the right amount of seasoning, and you can add whatever you need additional if you find something is missing in that taste. But this is tasting really good right now, and it looks delicious. Just delicious, and it's healthy and unhealthy at the same time. We threw those vegetables in, but of course the cream sauce does have a lot of calories in it. So we're going to let that set for just a little bit, and here I have some rolls that I had frozen from some that I had made last month, and they need to be used up. So I am just going to cut them in half, and they're still a little bit frozen, so they're a little tricky to cut. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make some toasted garlic bread with them. And so I'll just take a little bit of butter and put that on them, and sprinkle a little bit of garlic powder on them as well. You can also add a little Parmesan cheese or Italian seasoning. Those would be good also. And once I've got all of these seasoned up, I will just put them in my little tray here, and I'm going to put them in my little air fryer oven. That way I don't have to heat up my big oven, and they will cook really quickly in there, and they will taste delicious with our tortellini. So let's serve this up. I've got a ladle here. Let me give it a quick stir, and you can see it's thickened up a lot in there. It's only been sitting there for about 10-15 minutes just while the bread was toasting. And so we're just going to put a little in this pasta bowl here, and we can add some toppings to it. I'll add some of the leftover Parmesan cheese, give it a nice little sprinkle, and some freshly ground pepper. And we can't forget our garlic toast. Adding a couple of pieces with it will just take this over the top. So grab a side salad and sit down and enjoy this tortellini dinner. It is delicious, and we enjoyed it heated up the next couple of days too. At the beginning of March, when I still had this awful cold and I could not speak very well, I decided I was going to go ahead and start doing some of my spring planting. And I had purchased this big brick of coconut husks, and it's really compressed, and once you add it to water it becomes nice and fluffy, and it's a great medium to start seedlings in and also to amend to regular soil to allow more, I guess, water retention and loosen up the soil so roots can grow further. And so all you do is you just put this brick into some kind of a pail and add cold water. And it will really quickly become a soil-like mixture. And so I just filled it with this pitcher, and it seems like it was a gallon or more of water that you had to add to it. So it was quite a bit of water. And then I just set this aside, and I'll come back to it here in a bit and we can see what it looks like. So I just got that started. And then I wanted to work on my sweet potatoes because I need to get those started earlier. Last year I started them too late and we didn't have as big of sweet potatoes as we normally have. So I wanted to get them going. They seem to take a long time to start rooting and to start producing the sprouts. And I don't know if it's just this kind, but this is a sweet potato that is white inside. And it has the flesh that is the consistency of a regular potato, but it's very moist and it's sweet. And we really like this one. So I always have to save my sweet potatoes to make sure we have something to start for next year because I don't know where I could find it otherwise. And I'll put the name of the type I think it is on the screen below. I just can't remember right now. But you determine which end is the root end, and it's usually the pointier end. And you just put the sweet potato in a jar or a vase. This vase right here, and I filled it with too much water, but this vase right here will hold the sweet potato up. And so I don't need to put any toothpicks in it. If the jar was bigger than my sweet potato, I could add some toothpicks and that would hold it upright. But you need part of the sweet potato in the water to receive that water for it to root with. And so I'm going to set that one there. And this was one from the year before last. Now, I don't know if it's going to root or not, but I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try. But you can definitely see that that is a nice size sweet potato. We had just a few of them that were nice size. The rest were smaller size that were okay for us to eat and stuff, but they weren't as big as usual just because we didn't get the plants out in time. We really need to have more time with them in the soil, and they're just stubborn about sprouting. So here I've got another jar here with some water, and then here's just some that I picked out from what we had left over, and they're not as big, but they're healthy sweet potatoes, no bad spots or anything on them. And you can see here I'm going to try putting some toothpicks in them for this group, and it would stand up just like that and be fine. So there's one there. And then I have two smaller ones here that I think I can get both of them in the same jar because they are smaller. Now, these will, if they make as many as usual, these sweet potatoes will make more than we need. But I always like to err on the side of caution because we definitely want to have some to plant. So I'm getting several of them started. And you know, you could even plant these vines as pot fillers to go down the sides, and I've done that before, and they go really nicely with flowers, and they do have a pretty flower at the end of the season on them. So then I'm just going to fill this up with water, and I need just a little bit more water for this one. And then I'll just put all of these in the sun right here by our window, and hopefully they will sprout quickly and we will be able to get them out into our garden in time this spring. So now let's take a peek at our soil and see what it looks like. And this has just been a few minutes, and you can see how it's broken down already, and it has absorbed a lot of that water. There's still a lot of hard stuff in the center of it, so I'll just kind of break it up a little bit so all of it can reach that water. And let that get soaked in nicely. Now we're going to work on the geranium. Now I was able to bring this geranium pot in at the end of the season last year, and I've just kept it in this sunny window on our sun porch here, and it's done really well. But I want to go ahead and propagate it so that we have more plants, and that way I don't have as many to purchase. I am going to be using these blueberry cartons right here to propagate the geraniums. And so I'm just adding some potting soil and some of the coconut husk and just making a nice light soil. These containers have slits down the sides. There's a lot of ways that water can get to them. And so I've also got them in this deeper pan. So I'll just be watering from the bottom, and it will soak into the containers through those slits and keep the soil moist, and those little cuttings will continue to have moisture all the time. What I'm doing here is I am looking for a non-woody stem that is about 3 to 6 inches long, and I cut it right below where the leaves are growing out, and then I take all the lower leaves off so that there's just a couple left. You do need a couple of leaves to aid in the photosynthesis process. And I do have some rooting hormone. You don't have to put your stems in rooting hormone, but it does help. I just take a little bit of it. I dip in a little water first, and then I just put some of that hormone on it. It's just a powder. And then once I have some on it, then I stick it right there in the soil. And then I'll continue doing the same thing for several of these cuttings. I think I'll get about 4 off of this plant today, and that way I'll have 5 plants to take outside and get my spring flower garden started. And if you select one that has a flower or a flower bud, you need to take that flower or bud off because you don't want it to be concentrating its energy into producing those flowers. You want to concentrate the energy into making the roots. And so there I had a little bit of a bud in there that I removed. And again, the rooting hormone, and then placing it in the soil. And what I've found with these little blueberry containers is I can cut that lid off, and then I can just lay it on top of my cuttings, and it gives it kind of a greenhouse effect, but it still doesn't make it so moist in there that we have rotting leaves. And it's working out really well so far. And I'm just going to keep them here in the sunny window as well. In this pot right here, I have some amaryllis bulbs, and these I have had for many years. I started off with, I believe, one, and just kind of, it's grown into several. And so I need to transplant these and get these out of here. Last year, after one of the bulbs bloomed, I just cut the bloom off and kept the foliage going until summertime, and then placed it in a full sun area where I watered it regularly with my other flower plants. And it grew really well all summer. And then once it turned cold, we brought it inside. Actually, we just brought it to our mudroom, which is not heated, and set it in there. It did get really, really cold in there for a couple of days this winter, and I was really surprised that they are still alive because they are very susceptible to cold weather. They're a tropical plant, and so they did survive, and I'm hoping that they will bloom this year. At least one or two of them will bloom. We'll see. The smaller ones shouldn't bloom. They're too small yet, but if we can get them transplanted, we can make them larger. So when you dig them up, this dirt was really hard from being in there for so long. Just be real gentle and make sure you get the roots that you're pulling out. Check the bulb to make sure there's no soft spots, because that means it's rotting and it won't survive. And then I just kind of took off a little bit of that extra dirt so that I can set it in a container here next to me so I can get all of these out, and then I'll show you what I do with them. I'll show you a better view of how I dig these out and what I pull out here. So I just kind of be real careful around all of those little bulbs that are in there and find a spot where I can get my shovel and I can just kind of lift the whole clump out. So I'll set it down for a second and show you what we get out of there. And again, be very careful. You don't want to tear up your bulbs. And there we've got it. So as you can see, they're all stuck together with the other bigger bulb, and we need to separate those off. And they're individual now, and so when you just pull them off, they come off and just they have their own root system and everything as well. So we'll just get a few of those off, get some of that dirt out of there, and separate them from each other. And then you just need to use a little bit of strength, not much, do it gently, and they'll separate real nicely. And so there is one. And because it's sunny this day, it's kind of hard to see whether or not you guys are able to see these bulbs that I have in my hand, so I'm kind of holding them in different areas. All of them have their own roots, and I'm just setting them in a little basket right there next to me. So I have lots of them. Now I love using old coal buckets for planters, and this one, as you can see, is all dented up, but it has lots of character. It even has a rusted hole in the middle of it down at the bottom, which is perfect because these need to be able to drain. So I am going to be putting the smaller bulbs in this tub. But before I do, I think I'm going to take a little piece of paper or something that will gradually disintegrate and just cover that bottom hole just temporarily so that I can get this dirt in without having it drain all over my tablecloth there. And I'm just going to be putting in this pot some of the potting soil and some of the coconut husk, and that way it'll have good drainage and these should take off really well. So let me add all the soil together and I'll bring you right back. So here are the small amaryllis bulbs that I'm going to be putting in there, and I will put several because there's plenty of room in it. And then I'll take the larger ones and I'll be planting them separately, and I'll show you that in just a second. Now, when planting an amaryllis bulb, you do not want to plant the whole bulb. I want the roots to be in the dirt, but I want the top of the bulb up out of the dirt. So just kind of dig a little hole and just kind of set those roots. They're nice and straight. You don't want to have them all tightly wadded up in there, and just pat the soil down around it. And so I'm just going to put all of these little ones right here. And I will give these a good watering in a little bit and just set them down on the floor so that they can get some sun as well. I'll be putting them outside once it is summertime, and they'll have a nice sunny place to grow. This soup terrain is something I just picked up at a secondhand store, and somebody had chalk painted it white, but I thought it would make a great planter for bulbs. So I'm going to go ahead and put a liner in it. That way it'll be easy to take these amaryllis bulbs out if I need to. And I found that this OxyClean container fit perfectly. All I need to do is just trim it down so that the edge won't be poking up. And once I get it to the right height, it will just set down in there nicely. And I think once the weight of the soil goes in there, it will go down even further. So I will put a larger amaryllis bulb in this one. So I'll first put just a little bit of soil in there to get it started. And I'll also add a little coconut husk. Then I need to decide which of the bulbs I want to put in there. I've got two nice large ones. I think I'll do the largest. And so I just make a hole down in there and I put the roots down straight and make sure that they are in the soil, but the top of the bulb is out. And just like that, we have that one transplanted. Just push the soil down nice and tight around it so that there's no air gaps. And I'll grab a towel here and just kind of dust off the dirt. And that looks great. So here we have a nice potted amaryllis that hopefully will bloom and it will do nicely inside. Then I also have this metal tin planter, and I think this little ice cream sherbet bucket will fit nicely in there. And so now I'm going to plant another one in this container. I'm going to do it the same way. Put a little soil, a little bit of coconut husk, and then my amaryllis. And so this is the one I'm going to put in there. And I just want to make sure the roots can go all the way down in there and not be too crowded. And then I'll fill the sides with more of our soil. Now you may have noticed that I did not put any holes in those containers that were set in the planters, and that's just because I don't want them to leak out. Now amaryllis are pretty good about having all the nutrients and a lot of the water that they need stored in the bulb, but I will keep these watered, but I won't overwater them, and I'll make sure I let them dry out in between waterings. So these look like they're just about ready. I just need one more handful, it looks like, of dirt. And as you can see, I'm trying to make sure I don't have any air pockets in my soil. And there is that one right there. And for my last larger amaryllis bulb, I am just going to plant it in this planter that a plant would have come in last year. And this does have holes in it. So I'm going to put it in this yellowware looking container. And it is actually just a sugar container for the counter. And I've had it for a while. I've used it as a sugar canister. And it'll be perfect for this use. It'll make a nice looking little planter. So I'm just going to put soil in there, put my bulb in there, and then put a little soil around it so that the bulb still sticks out, but the roots are all completely covered. And there you can see I lift it a little bit and get it so it's a little higher up, but I press the soil down too. So we'll just get one more handful and it will be good. And so that should work. And we'll put it into our canister. And that fits perfect. And here we have our cleaned off table and all of the plants that we worked with today. Got the geraniums right down there enjoying the sunshine. And we have the Christmas cactus, the amaryllis, the sweet potatoes. They are all looking good. Last week, I released a video on how to use a reusable shopping bag to make a tote bag, a quilted tote bag that you quilt as you go. And it had a bee in the center with strips around it. And I had a lot of people comment how much they love that tote bag. And in the video, I had said that I was currently working on more and different styles. And so today, since you guys enjoyed that bee tote bag so much, I thought I'd share another style that I made that you can also make if you like it as well. And so in this video, I'm just going to go through the steps of making the design of the pattern and the quilted design. But if you want to know how to piece all of the tote together, you can go to the original video, and I'll put a link in the description box, and it will be found at the very bottom of the description box if you scroll down to the bottom. But this one right here is going to be Americana, and it is going to be perfect for summer. So I've done the same thing that I did in the original video for the first tote bag, the bee tote bag. And here I am putting the lines for the creases or the folds where the sides and the bottom meet. Now, I told you in the last video that you really don't need these, and I didn't really need them too much in the last video, but I really wanted to put them in this one because in this bag we're going to be having horizontal strips, and I want to make sure that they stay pretty parallel and pretty straight. If they start getting wonky, I can straighten them up when I get to those lines, I can tell. Now you can see that I am using the same size bag that I used for my bee tote bag. It is a Missouri Star shopping bag, and I had several of them from a trip to Missouri Star. And it is not very big, so the strip sizes that I'm using are 1 3/4 inches wide. I just need them to be the size that will go across that short width of my tote. And so if you're making a large tote bag with a regular size shopping bag, you can use 2.5 inch strips, but just make sure you cut them long enough to go across the width of your bag. So here I have my fabric strips, and I've chosen some low volume whites and then a lot of different reds because I want to make this kind of a scrappy look. Now you can use just plain red and plain white strips, whatever you'd like, but this is what I chose, and several of these are from Minnick and Simpson. So as you can see, I laid that first red strip right there against that first line that I made. And I'm going to be going up the front of my tote bag. And I'm just making sure that both strips are right together and those edges meet. Then I'm going to grab some pins and I'll just pin these two strips in place. Now, once you get started, you may not need to use pins at all. In fact, after a while, I was just laying my pieces on there and holding them as I sewed. So if you feel secure without using the pins, by all means do that. It goes by a lot faster. So I'm going to be sewing right there on that left side. And there we have our piece sewn on. So we open it up. And you can either finger press it, and you want it to lay really flat because you don't want to have any pleats in it or bubbles. And you can even take this to your ironing station and give it a light press. Remember, you do have a tote bag back there, and it is plastic, so do it real lightly and just get it so that it's lying flat. Then what we're going to do is take our next strip, and again, we're alternating our red and our white strips. And so I'm going to lay it on top of the white strip. And again, I am going to either pin or hold it and sew it on the left edge right there like I did last time. Then you're going to go ahead and flip that one back. If you need to press lightly, you can. And you're going to add your next strip. And you're going to continue this all the way until you get to that top edge of the bag on your left. And once you have it all the way to that edge, make sure it goes all the way off of your tote bag. Now, remember I had a little excess batting on here, so that strip does go all the way across my tote bag in the back. And you just want to make sure all of your stripes and your strips are running nice and straight. So now we're going to go toward the right. And we're going to keep an eye on those lines that we have drawn just to make sure we are going straight. So between here and that next line, when we get to that next line, that strip should be straight. If not, just kind of compensate by overlapping one a little bit over one side or another. And then you're going to go all the way over to the left. And here we have all of our strips all the way across this panel. And remember, on that last strip, make sure it goes past the edge of your tote bag. So now we need to trim it down, and we're going to do that the same as we did with our last bag. Just line up your straight edge with your shopping bag and trim it. And trim real carefully. You don't want to cut into your shopping bag because that is the exact size that we need. So you're going to trim all the way around. And our main panel is all finished. So we're going to set this one aside. Let's work on the side panels. So here's what the side panels are going to look like. I've decided on having 2 sawtooth star quilt blocks for my sides. Now, depending on the size of your bag will depend on the size of your star block and how many you can get on the side. I'm going to be sharing with you this really nice download. It is a sawtooth star quilt block size cutting chart. And it is from Amy Smart, and her site is diaryofaquilter.com. It is just a wonderful resource to have on hand when you're making sawtooth stars if you want to make different sizes. And she's got many different sizes that you can make. And I have chosen the 4-inch sawtooth star block, and I'm going to be able to get 2 of them on my side. So if you have a different size bag, you're going to need to measure and figure out which size works best for your bag and how many you can fit. So here I have all of my fabric cut out and ready to go. I am making 2 stars at a time, and I also have my sashing pieces at the top there. So what you're going to first of all do is you're going to take your goose square, which is my blue square, and you're going to take your sky squares. You have 4 of those for each one, and that's my white square. And you are going to put them on each opposite corner of your goose square. Then using a pen or fabric marker, you are going to draw a diagonal line on each of your sky squares. They're going to go from one corner to the opposite corner. And this is going to be your cut line, so you don't have to worry about it showing, that line showing in your project. So as you can see, I'm lining those up right here, and those lines should just continue straight. Now I'm going to go ahead and do my other star at the same time. If I didn't already have that one side finished, I would be making 4 stars. There's no sense in just making one at a time. You can make all of your stars at once and just chain piece them through the sewing machine, and it will go a lot faster. So I'm doing the same thing here, making sure that those lines line up and that they are nicely squared up on the corners down there. And so I'm going to take that to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides. Remember, if you need to pin, I suggest you pin because you don't want them to move on you. I have now sewn a 1/4 inch along each side of that line, and we are now going to cut on that line. You can use your scissors or you can use a rotary cutter, it doesn't matter, but just cut right there on the line. This is your seam allowance line. Now you have 2 identical pieces, and we're just going to flip those sky squares up, and we can give a finger press or we can take them to our iron and press them. But you now have 2 pieces that look to me like either little hearts or even a cat head. So we're going to do the same thing with our other square here. And again, cutting it right down the middle, flipping back our sky squares. And I'm going to take this to my ironing board and give it a press. Now that our pieces are nicely pressed, we're going to take the remaining sky squares and we are going to draw diagonal lines from one corner across to the opposite corner. And again, this is going to be a cut line, so you can use whatever you'd like to draw these lines. And once we have all of the lines drawn, we are going to be placing those pieces on the bottom corners and covering that blue area. Now this time the drawn line is going straight up. It is going right between those 2 sky square peaks. And here I'm showing you how you can pin on both sides of that line so that your presser foot can go through there without having to remove those pins. And I really do suggest you pin these because you do want them to be accurate. So we're going to go to the sewing machine and we are going to sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides of that drawn diagonal line. And we're going to do this on all 4 of our blocks. And here we have them sewn. So what we're going to do now is take our scissors and we're going to cut right on that line again. And it is really thick right there where all those seams meet. And once you cut and open up all of these blocks, you are going to find that you have flying geese blocks. And they are a bit oversized, so we're going to trim them down. So go ahead and get all of them cut apart, and I go ahead and flip all of the sky squares back and I give it a press. And then I'm going to grab my favorite flying geese trimming tool and we're going to trim these to the right size. So these need to be trimmed down to 1 inch by 2 inch finished. So we need to have 1.5 by 2.5 inches as our cut size right now. If you are needing more instructions on how to trim down flying geese, I do have a video called Moda's Gather Around Table Runner, and at the 33-minute mark I do show you very detailed instructions on how to trim down flying geese using different rulers and even just a plain square ruler. I will put a link to that video in the description box below. If you'd like for me to do a video on how to make flying geese in different ways and how to trim them down, just leave a comment down below and I would gladly do that if enough people are interested. And once your flying geese are all trimmed up, we are just going to lay out our sawtooth star blocks to make them look the way they should look, making sure that you have all your star points pointing out. And again, those top rectangular pieces are the sashing that we're going to add soon. So now that we have all of our blocks laid out the correct way, we are just going to treat them as a 9 patch, and we're going to sew the first blocks on the right there to those middle blocks, and then sew the left side blocks to the strip that we have made. And then once all of those are sewn together and you have 3 horizontal strips, we will just sew those 3 horizontal strips together, just like a 9 patch. Now that our sawtooth stars are completed, we can now add our sashing, and you're going to have to cut your sashing to the size you need. I just measured, the distance of what I needed in between each space, and then added a 1/2 of an inch for my seam allowance, and that way I had plenty. You can add a little more at the top and the bottom and then trim it down so that you know you have enough. So here's what I've got here, and I'm just sewing all 5 of those pieces together. Now that I have this strip all sewn together, I am going to take my side panel here and I'm going to go ahead and trim off that batting so I can see exactly how much I have of my panel to work with. So just take a straight edge and trim all around. Now I can flip it over and I can lay my strip right exactly in the middle. And in order to find the middle, we are once again going to be folding it both directions and making creases and lines right down the middle so that we can see where the middle is horizontally and where the middle is vertically. Then I'm going to take my strip section here and I'm going to crease it in the middle as well, just putting little crease marks on the edges there so that I can match those up with my lines. And then I'll fold it the other way and do the same thing. And now when I lay it out on my batting, I can make sure it's nicely centered, just like that, just matching the lines to those folds. And we can see that the top and the bottom have a little excess, and that's fine. But now we need to secure this strip onto this panel. And so what we're going to do is we are going to do some stitching, and I am just going to stitch right on the seams of that sawtooth star. You can do straight lines, you can do diagonal lines, you can stitch in the ditch, you can stitch a 1/4 inch away from the ditch, whatever you'd like to do. And now the stars are quilted onto our panel. And you can see the stitches right there. Now we just need to cover up the rest of that batting, and we can do that with some strips. Just cut them plenty long so that they'll cover the whole piece and even can hang over. That would be fine. And lay them there and stitch just like we did earlier with our stripes. Now our side panel is all quilted down. Just finger press it down in place so we don't have any puckers. And now we're going to flip it over and we are going to sew a really close seam all the way around. So you want to just do an edge stitch all the way around. And now we have everything sewn securely and we can just trim this down, again following that edge of your side panel. And our side panel is complete, and we have all of our pieces ready to construct our tote. So if you go back to that video with the bee tote, you will find the complete instructions on how to finish this. I think it looks just beautiful. I really like this one and the way it came out. I did add a tag right there between the handle there. I had one from last year that was patriotic and I really liked it, so I stuck it right there. But it went together so nicely, and again, once you put this together, these are very heavy-duty tote bags because the straps and the bag have that reinforcement of that plastic, and they are just so nice to have. I hope you get to make one of these totes, and I hope you enjoyed this video.